I think we're going to jump right in to the introductions, and I'm going to start at the far end of the table with Susan Schwartz. So Susan is the Executive Director of the Seamala Foundation. She's been in that position since 2006. She has over 35 years of experience in citizen-driven strategic planning, leadership development, and project implementation for communities. Her past positions have included project coordinator for Greensboro Visions. She was the founding executive director for the Piedmont Triad Horizons, which is now what we know of as the Piedmont Triad Partnership. She was also the founding executive director of Action Greensboro, and she is the recipient of many, many awards, and I'm only going to mention a couple of the more recent ones, just to give you a sense of Susan. In 2006, she was the Basics Learning Network Sustainability Award winner. She also received the Greensboro Chamber's 2025 Thomas C. Osborne Distinguished Citizen Award. 2024, she was the UNC Greensboro Adelaide F. Holderness and H. Michael Weaver Award winner. In 2019, she was the News and Record Woman of the Year, and also has been recognized by Salem College as the 2014 Distinguished Alumna Award. And I could really go on and on, but I'm going to stop right there. She also is the wife of Jerry, who is here, the mother of 2 boys, the stepmother of 2 girls, and a grandmother of 2, a boy and a girl. So we're glad to have Susan as a part of this discussion. Thank you, Susan. So, Dawn Chaney. Dawn grew up in Hopewell, Pennsylvania, a small town of 600 residents. And I have to say, I did not know about Dawn until I got the bio, and I'm kind of embarrassed I didn't. By age 22, Dawn was teaching at the college level, and she completed a PhD at Texas Women's University by age 29. She had a teaching career that eventually brought her to Greensboro, and in 1971 she joined the faculty at Bennett College. She became a full professor there with tenure, and she was a department chair. And then after 10 years at Bennett, she set off and started her own property investment business. She has invested mostly in properties around Center City. She has really contributed to the renaissance of downtown Greensboro. And she has also been recognized with some recent awards, including the Ed Kitchen Leadership Award from Downtown Greensboro Incorporated, the Spirit of Entrepreneur Award from Junior Achievement of Central North Carolina, and the prestigious Athena Award from the Greensboro Chamber of Commerce. And Dawn also has lots of other activities I could talk about. So, Natalie Pass-Miller is a preservationist, a cultural strategist, and an entrepreneur. She is redefining historic preservation by challenging its traditional static model and replacing it with something far more dynamic. Living, revenue-generating ecosystems rooted in culture, community, and economic power. Natalie is a Greensboro native, grew up in the old Ashboro neighborhood, if I'm right about that, and she's an alumna of North Carolina A&T State University, and the visionary behind today's historic Magnolia House, which is a fully restored 1949 Green Book Hotel and Living Museum that once served as a refuge for Black travelers during segregation. Natalie's work has also earned national recognition, including honors as a minority-owned Business of the Year in North America, the Gertrude S. Carraway Awards of Merit, and Magnolia House's designation as a distinctive destination by the National Trust for Historic Preservation. Hanna Cockburn, welcome. Hanna is the city's Department of Transportation Director, and she and her team make Greensboro more car optional through transportation planning and design. They handle traffic operations, safety programs, maintenance activities, and parking operations. Hanna is a member of the Women's Transportation Seminar, American Planning Association, and the Institute of Transportation Engineers. She's the past president of the North Carolina chapter of the American Planning Association. She's a member of the Transportation Research Board's Standing Committee on Bicycle Transportation, and she serves on the North Carolina Vision Zero Task Force and is vice chair of the newly created or designated Piedmont and Coastal North Carolina Clean Cities Coalition. And Barber Peck. Barber moved to North Carolina from New York, where she had worked as a project manager and graphic designer in the magazine and book publishing industry. Since 2007, she has served as the Downtown Greenway's public art consultant, and she chairs our art selection panel. She's led the public input process and overseen the selection and installation of a wide range of public art installations in downtown Greensboro, as well as the Downtown Greenway. She has served on the board of the Weatherspoon Art Museum and elsewhere. She currently is on the board of the Dales Pony Conservancy of North America, and you'll have to ask Barber about that later. And she is the president of the board of Sweetbriar College Friends of Art organization. So, Nasha serves as Assistant City Manager for the City of Greensboro, and she leads a portfolio that shapes the city's growth, connectivity, and quality of life, and that includes the departments of Housing and Neighborhood Development, Parks and Recreation, Libraries and Museum, Transit, Workforce Development, and the Office of Arts and Culture. I always say that Nasha has all the really fun departments to lead. As former director of the Greensboro Parks and Recreation Department, she led that department to national reaccreditation and a National Gold Medal Award for Excellence. She also guided the development of the award-winning Plan to Play Master Plan, positioning parks, greenways, and open space as critical infrastructure for the city's future. Nasha holds a bachelor's degree in liberal studies and a master's in public administration with a concentration in urban and regional planning from the University of Central Florida. And she is a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners and remains actively engaged in civic and professional organizations. So you can see we put together a panel that wasn't very accomplished or interesting. So I'm going to launch into our questions, and Susan, I'm going to start with you. You have the longest tenure of this project of anybody, and as being the executive director of Action Greensboro, when the master plan for Center City was commissioned that identified the Downtown Greenway as a project for our community. So I would love for you to tell us a little bit about some of the significant milestones that took us from master planning to reality today.
Thank you, Dabney. Yes, I shouldn't even say this, but I would. Jim Melvin used to, at every meeting, say he was the oldest rat in the barn. And I'm not saying that, but I have been with the Greenway for quite some time. And I've got to say, I'm going to mention a few people, but the real action that has taken place all over this time really is up to Dabney and Chelsea. And Tripp's there you are, good. I thought maybe you had disappeared, and Tripp Brown. But I guess when I started thinking about this, I thought that for me personally, the friendships I've made and the acquaintances with city staff and others in the community that I never would have made otherwise, really is what sticks out to me. And I was with Tripp at lunch today, and he had gotten an award, and we were celebrating it, and he was saying that we were so lucky in this community to have the city staff we have. And that just is one of the things that has stuck with me from the very beginning until today. But I'll say that what really kicked us off was, I don't know who it was, but there was a city staff person or persons who knew that there was a hidden underpass along what's now the western branch of the Greenway. And they're into a street, I don't even know the name of the street, that had run there, and it was all covered with brush. And that was kind of like the aha moment of what was going to make this special. And so the next thing I would think about would be Rich Farrell and Cooper Care. That was the company, and he's the person who designed the Greenway. And he had the idea of the cornerstones and other things. And I don't even remember if he had the neighborhood idea or Dabney, if that was what I know it's what you really promoted, how we would connect the neighborhoods and involve people. I think another significant time was when Greensboro College allowed us to build the Greenway through their property, and that got us started. Because even though we love the city, we were having trouble getting the city at that point to be helpful. And I remember in our meetings, we just said, let's just do this. We've got this property, we're going to start it, and we'll show everybody that this can be done. So that was significant. I think Tyler Meyer with the city, who found federal and state funding, was very significant. And then, of course, November 4th, 2008, when the bond referendum passed. And that was then kind of a go, no-go move time, because we had said we were raising X amount of private funds. I think it got to be about $8 million. And we would contribute that if the city passed the bond referendum. So we have all these citizens to thank, and of course, city staff for getting it for us to vote. And then, of course, over and over, we've had funders, and we started out with major ones with the foundations, but we found a lot of other individuals from time to time, and we have a lot of leadership with the fundraising. Another significant thing for funding was we would have access to stormwater funds, and that might not mean much to some people, but it's a lot, and we've always been collecting money anywhere we could get it, and that was a really good thing. And then I just have to say, the city councils who got it, Denise, you're here today, thank you. But once we had city councils that really got this, then the momentum, the permission for staff to work on it, all of that kept going. I think Jim Gallucci, having the artist in town, because he did his own work, but he helped when we had problems and was very nice about doing that. I think another memorable moment is Andy Zimmerman letting us use his golf carts for tours, and the tours became such a popular thing. And I keep talking about city staff, but we've had people retire along the way. It's been a long project. And I think the last two things I'll mention are real estate and commercial development, because we said this would bring about development, and it has, and we can point that out. And then, Union Square. There was a talk about Union Square, where it was going to locate. And everybody was acting so mysterious about it. But finally, they decided they would locate it on the southern end of town and by the Greenway. So those are some of the things that just pop out to me as momentous during this journey.
Well, that's great. That's a really nice recap of not always the things that we talk about when we talk about the milestones, but adding those extra pieces. So thank you, Susan. And you kind of ended on that economic development note, which is certainly an important piece of why actually Greensboro decided to pursue this. And so, Dawn, I want to ask you, as a developer and a private investor in and around the downtown Greenway, I'd love for you to talk about why you think that's important, and then also thinking a little bit about that developer business typically being kind of a male-dominated industry. If you might talk a little bit about how it is as a woman to be leading a charge with that.
Thank you. You know what I say, women will lead the world. Anyhow, my first property that I bought in downtown Greensboro was in the 70s. And I gotta tell you this because so many of the male investors, and I was the only female at that time, would come to me and say, Dawn, you're gonna get killed downtown. Because after 5 o'clock, all the lights go off and everybody goes home. So I thought about it, and I thought to myself, well, we'll just lock the doors, make sure everybody has the doors locked when they get ready to close off the lights. And if you remember well, some of you will, Tallheimer's closed at 5 o'clock and everything turned off. So everything went downtown dark. And it didn't attract people to come down there and look at it today. So we've come a long way. And the properties that I have purchased and acquired, developed, and now leased, the tenants love it because they have a high level of people coming to their business. They love being downtown. And I tell them all, when that Greenway is finished, and it'll be just a matter of days, you will bring thousands of people to your business, and think what that will be for your future. And that's what we need to think about, the economic development of our downtown. And it is growing, and it's going to continue to grow. When I had that vision in the mid-70s, as I tell you, people really thought I had just lost it. And they all told me, you're going to fail, Don. You're not going to be successful. And I said to myself, I didn't tell them, I said to myself, you just have to prove that they're wrong. And I will tell you that the downtown, with a lot of the business owners that are downtown, and a lot of the buildings that are being developed, and a lot of the space that needs to be developed, we're going to make it happen. And I'm here to tell you that we have some very strong leaders in our city that can help that. And I predict that within the next few days and maybe a year, you're going to see a major change in around the Greenway in downtown, and how significant it's going to be for all the businesses. But if there's anything I can do, just get in touch with me. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Dawn. And as a business adjacent to the downtown Greenway, Natalie, the historic Magnolia House, has been an amazing partner for the downtown Greenway over these years, hosting many of our public meetings and community work and participating in our activities. So I'd love for you to talk just a little bit about the historic Magnolia House's relationship to the downtown Greenway and how that has been beneficial for both of us.
Absolutely. So thank you guys for having me, and it's good to see all of you. So Magnolia House, of course, I'm biased, but truly is special. And there's a lot of special in Greensboro, and a lot of hidden special, right, that we need to elevate and amplify. And so when I think about the Greenway as it relates to Magnolia, the thing that comes to mind is it's been the ultimate connector, right? So Magnolia House sits right on the corner, literally right on the edge of downtown Greensboro, East Greensboro, and South Side. So there's a connector right there in that cultural asset itself. But then you put the Greenway there. And now you're truly connecting and blending even more neighborhoods and even more communities together. That has been a truly, truly special for our business, because we have a truly blended demographic of people that come and they're curious and they just want to know, or they just want to eat. They just want to do something and be a part of Magnolia and want to understand more. The other thing I'll say to that too is, for North Carolina, the heritage and cultural tourism is a $36.7 billion industry for the state of North Carolina. What does that tell you? That tells you people are really curious about the stories, where they come from, how did it get to this? And here in Greensboro alone, we have so many rich cultural and heritage and just history, period. And so naturally, with people being curious, they're wanting to understand all the pieces. And so the Greenway really helps to be able to tell some of those stories and connect those areas so they get a truly comprehensive story. Thank you.
Yeah, great, thank you. So Hannah, you have worn a few different hats over the years. Previous to serving as our Director of Transportation, you worked in the planning department here in Greensboro and then had a little stint in Raleigh as the bike ped coordinator for NCDOT. So talk a little bit about how that journey has kind of informed your philosophy and your vision for the downtown Greenway.
Sure, and really it goes back even further than that. I'm looking at Chris Wilson because he and I have dug ditches together, like literally, working on Greenway projects from the very beginning of my career. I had the great opportunity to be paired with Roger Bardsley, which many of you know, who has been a huge Greenway advocate and supporter, and he really believed in rolling up your sleeves and getting your hands dirty and getting out into the field, and that gave me a grounding that I didn't get in graduate school. And it really ignited a passion for non-motorized transportation, for bicycling, and for walking, and that carried through the rest of my career. It really brought me to transportation as an area of expertise that really wasn't being fulfilled in any real sense in our region and in the state of North Carolina, and really kind of the Southeast. We don't believe in walking and biking. Well, we didn't, but we do now. It's changing. Partly because we are building facilities that people can relate to and can see themselves using and can see them in the context of the communities that they are living in, that they are learning in, that they're playing in. And I think all of those things really matter. I've had the great good fortune in those different roles to play different roles related to some key elements of the downtown Greenway, including providing some key funding when we needed to get the ANY corridor from Norfolk Southern, being able to allocate that from the state to make that project possible because there was a funding gap and we didn't really have a whole lot of other ways to fill it. So managing that relationship with Norfolk Southern has been interesting, but also living so close to the downtown Greenway and really being able to experience it and see how it has brought communities together and encourage active transportation and help people see how they can be part of this overall project just by using it.
Well, thank you, Hannah. That is a really refreshing philosophy about transportation, and we're so glad that the Downtown Greenway has been a piece of helping people to see that. So, Barbara, you have helped the Downtown Greenway commission local artists, regional artists, national artists, and I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that selection process and why we like to have that mix of local, regional, and national artists here in Greensboro on the Downtown Greenway.
Sure. Thank you, Dabney. It's really a pleasure to be here. We have commissioned over 40 pieces of public art for the Downtown Greenway, and they range in scale from utility box covers and bicycle racks to neighborhood benches.
Can you just hold it up just a
Okay.
little bit? Yeah.
Neighborhood benches and major pieces of artwork on our four cornerstones. And what we did was we set out intentionally to create a process where for certain projects we would put out calls to just Greensboro local artists. And for other calls we would expand that circle to include artists from the state of North Carolina. And then for our larger projects we would increase that reach nationally. The feeling being that some of the expertise and knowledge required for those larger pieces really meant that we had to look beyond our borders. And what was terrific about this process is we tapped into incredible artists, I think, for all of the commissions that we've done. But when we brought people from outside Greensboro or the state into our community, They wound up working with our local artists and giving them an ability to collaborate in a way that they never would have had the opportunity to do if we had not. And ultimately, Dabney reminded me of a particular case where, I don't know if you remember Frank Russell, who was a found object maker of fish sculptures downtown, and very much a local artist, and we commissioned a Rhode Island artist to do Gateway of the Open Book, and he traditionally had incorporated small little pieces of unique sculpture within his large-scale work. And what Brower did was he pivoted and asked Frank to provide those little sculptures, and he did. And what wound up happening is then they ultimately collaborated. I think it was a San Diego project. So Frank got called to work on a project in San Diego with this nationally recognized artist as a result. So I think we can feel really proud of the fact that we try to think local as much as possible. I mean, Susan mentioned Jim Bellucci, oh my gosh, you know. We tap into his knowledge and expertise so often. But it's also wonderful for us, I think, as a city to pick our heads up and look out and see this creative energy that exists outside of our borders and bring them here to our city, and then ultimately we're left with some piece of that when those artists go home and finish their job. So it's really been a wonderfully collaborative experience with all sorts of artists from all sorts of places, and I'm kind of proud of all the work that they've done here. So,
Great, thank you. So Nasha, we've heard a lot of praise for the city, well deserved.
Finally, thank you.
But I'd love for you, from the city's perspective, to talk about why the city has invested so heavily in this project and continues to invest as we get ready for that completion.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Dabney, too, well, first of all, thank you for allowing me to participate as a part of this phenomenal panel. And thank you to you all in the audience for joining us for this conversation. I mean, honestly, to answer your question, 2 words, why not? I mean, if you really look at, from a city's perspective, we view the downtown Greenway not just as infrastructure, in a traditional sense as a sidewalk and utilities and things like that, but infrastructure in the sense of it's a way to connect community. And one of my panelists also said that, from a quality of life standpoint, it's infrastructure for that. It's infrastructure for economic development. All of those things work hand in hand when you start to think about the vitality of a neighborhood and for a broader community. And so from the city's perspective, that's important, not just for what is on the ground right now, but where we envision our city to grow and what we envision it to look like in the future. From our perspective as well, I would say that from a connection standpoint, it was really important for us to make sure that we had the opportunity to use the downtown Greenway as a way to reconnect communities that have been previously disconnected or fragmented, from our urban core and from our center city. And so this is a way for us to connect your old Asheboro on the south side, over to Westerwood, Fisher Park, and all of the other neighborhoods in between, to make sure that everyone saw themselves, in this destination. And I think that is important, in terms of the health of our community and the way that our residents connect with each other from a social and a health and wellness standpoint as well. The other thing, in just by going out on the Greenway, around the Greenway, whether you're within the actual, 4-mile loop or you're just outside of it, you can literally look around and see the impact as a result of the development that has happened. You see the housing happening. You see the activation, you see the programming, you see the public art, and I think the way that it's used, you have people that are walking, you have people that are running, some people bird watch, others, they sit on a bench and just watch people. I have seen people turn it into a full-fledged photo shoot, which is probably not what we intended, but that's what it means, from a city's perspective of why this is so important, and from an investment standpoint, why it absolutely made sense. The other thing I think is also the way that we maintain it, I think is also important for us and being intentional about that. What I have found in my experience, not just as a planner, but, and I know some of my fellow Parks and Rec folks can relate to this, is those details matter. And because this is an amenity that is so intensive and it's so intricate, you know, the expectations for the way that we maintain it is so high. It's actually set the bar for the way that we manage and design and operate public spaces other places across the city. And even this facility that you're sitting in right now, you know, this is unique to Parks and Recreation. And I would have to say, you know, thinking about the way that the downtown Greenway is managed, maintained, the partnerships that have, you know, gone into and the relationships built off of this has helped to drive that. And it's changed the city's perspective and the way that we serve our residents. So I would say it's more than just the actual dollars and cents investment. It's just having the foresight of really what this could mean for the future of our community.
Great. Well, thanks everyone. I've now got a question that I want everybody to answer, and I'm not going to call on you. I'm going to let you all answer as you'd like. But if you could kind of wave a magic wand, I'd love to hear from you what kind of your visions for the downtown Greenway in the future would be.
I'll jump in there. My wish, if I had a wand, we would not be here. We would actually be on because it would be open. We would already cut the ribbon yesterday. I would say, you know, the Greenway would be viewed as Greensboro's living room. You know, not just green space, but just people, or just a corridor, or as a pass-through, but a space where people feel like they belong, you know, no matter where in town they live, or what side of town they're coming from or getting to. I would want to see, and I know that we're headed this way, but even more activations, you know, small businesses that may be popping up, you know, more places to eat, you know, even more art. You know, just daily life, people going from point A to point B and just utilizing it in a way that they choose to experience it. Maybe not what we have envisioned it, but just being able to have a space that they can create as their own. Because again, as a planner, I'm always amazed that we have in our mind how we intend the place to be. And then once you build it, it's always amazing to see how people will out-design what you design, and then they'll change it. So that's what I would see, just, you know, kind of a fast forward to where the entire connection is open and it's built out and it's open and people are just pop-ups and doing different types of things. Just all types of movement is what I would use my magic wand for.
Great, thank you. Who else? Dawn?
Thank you, and thank you for all those recommendations. I think that what we need to do is rezone everything inside the Greenway so that we can bring businesses here that will fit into our central business district and also be able to function as a successful business and not be on the outskirts. Think of this. Right now, we have circulating around the Greenway, light industrial. That's around our Greenway right now. If we have that all rezoned so that we can have that open for small restaurants, maybe an ice cream shop, a lunch store, anything like that as it goes around the Greenway, and you bring your little ones down to the Greenway to go around, now you can stop and socialize with the other ones that are stopped, as at the same time have an ice cream cone or have lunch, whatever you would like. We need to do that for educating all the people of how valuable it is to be downtown, because they now have a destination of where they would like to go. They could exercise, they can run, they can walk, they can do all those things on the Greenway, as well as stop and socialize and do it. And I think the vacant land that we have, someone just asked me about that, the vacant land that we have around the Greenway, if we get that rezoned, you'll have apartments going up right on the Greenway. And if you think about that, think of how many people then that will be on not only in our downtown, but they'll be adjacent to the Greenway, which will circulate all the people around the neighborhoods. And there are 8 neighborhoods that survive the Greenway. We have to have a vision for the future, for tomorrow. Not 5 years from now, not 10, tomorrow. And I really think that's going to bring Greensboro, particularly all the new people that are moving here because of the new businesses. And then they'll be able to bring their families, their friends, and their neighbors all to our downtown.
Great, thank you, Dawn. Who else has got some ideas? Susan?
Well, I've told Dabney a million times that Jerry and I were in Chevy Chase, Maryland one time and parked in a parking garage, and we're gonna go get something to eat, and we noticed all these people were driving in, parking in the parking garage and getting their bicycles out and getting on the trail. So, my vision that could happen tomorrow is, number one, what about families who would come from other parts of the state, ride the train, get off at the depot with their bikes, ride their bikes up to the Children's Museum, maybe go to the Civil Rights Museum, and just have a nice day, and then get on the train and go back home. My other thought, and Natalie, this gets to you, and the tourism piece is, we've got a lot of hotels downtown. We also have a Henry in proximity that are on the Greenways. And, people always want to go somewhere for a day or two and just spend the night, have a nice meal, visit the Magnolia House for sure, and then to be able to get a bike or scooter and roll around, I think will be wonderful. So I just think there are all kinds of things that we are going to realize. But I think that's something you would see and feel like this is making a difference.
Great, thank you, Susan. Hanna?
So I think of the downtown Greenway as serving as the beating heart of our bicycle and pedestrian network. And in my wildest dreams, it catalyzes our community to continue to invest in growing that circulatory system, not just north and south, but east and west, so that we're reaching more and more places and more people who then all have a convenient and safe way to reach the downtown Greenway.
Well done. Yeah.
So, I think I listened to everyone here that has spoken, and I think about the human experience and the science of people. And what comes to my mind is if there was this really cool, immersive experience where each leg of the Greenway had its own different identity, so it creates a different experience. That way more people are wanting to come back and try something different, and so they're always touching it. And they don't feel like they're getting the same thing in every single aspect of the Greenway. That gets your attention and keeps people wanting to come back, and then they want their people to come back, and then the tourism wants to keep coming back. And then they could add some pixie dust and some fairies and butterflies. It's perfect.
Great. Barber, how about you? Do you have a vision you want to share?
Well, one of the things that I think is kind of a hidden treasure about the Greenway when it ultimately gets open that a lot of people aren't aware of is that we've got a sound guide. And we've invited each of the artists who created an installation for the Greenway to record the story of their artwork and tell us a little bit about their work and their piece. And I remember reading about another city that had something, and it was something called like Scoring the Greenway. And you could plug into the sound guide that they created, and not only could you stop at these multiple points and listen to, what Radcliffe Bailey, now deceased, had to say about the Freedom Cornerstone. I mean, literally some of the last recorded words that artist ever spoke. But you could also click to some sort of musical score that would take you, and to your point, you could score each section of the Greenway maybe some way that would make it different or something. I just think that would be an incredible experience to be riding your bike and listening to some score of music that maybe just when you're or walking, as you're walking or running or pushing a stroller, or I just, for me, me, that would be a really, I would love to have that sound component play more of a role in the Greenway, so.
Yeah, I think about this kind of existing but then continuing emerging music scene that we have here, so that could be a really fun project to work on. I do have another question to ask everybody, but I also wanted to make sure we had time for questions from the audience, so I think I'm going to do that, and we'll see how that timing goes, and if we have time at the end, I'll throw in kind of a last question, but I'd love to open it up if anybody has questions for any and all of our panelists today. There has to be one, at least. Yes?
I have a question about parking. So if I'm coming from another part of Greensboro, I'm not near downtown, is there parking that is adjacent to the Greenway that I can get to easily?
Yes. So one of the considerations that we made, and actually working with Natalie to solve some parking problems that we were both encountering, created an opportunity to use leftover right-of-way to provide safe, physically accessible, ADA accessible parking on the Greenway in proximity to Magnolia House has been a great blessing. That when we originally were envisioning the project, that was not part of it, but we worked really hard to add that in as part of a critical piece to solve some of those access issues. We've got another parking area off of Spring Garden Street, and then there's surface lots and other on-street parking in proximity to locations throughout the Greenway. So it's definitely something we kept in mind and took advantage of in the places where we discovered that there was an opportunity.
And I will say we have a really nice interactive map that's on our website, downtowngreenway.org. And on that interactive map, it has a number of filters, and one of those is a parking filter. So you can click that, and it shows you all of the places that you can park there. And it's also listed on our brochure as well. Yeah. Cecilia.
Yeah, I've got a question. We've been working on pitching the downtown Greenway to the national media, and so if you're all creative enough, maybe I'll put Nasha on the spot first. If the New York Times wrote a piece about the downtown Greenway in May, what would the headline? What would you want the headline to be?
She would start with me. Oh, man. Oh, something, I would have to say something really, really catchy, right? Because we're opening, so, downtown, Greensboro's downtown Emerald Necklace, is open, or something of that nature. I think that could put it on the scale at the national level. I know we've actually had quite a few communities already reach out to us because the downtown Greenway is really unique to have that length of a corridor, around our urban center, and to surround it that way. That makes Greensboro really unique. And so I would see that being like our crown jewel of downtown. And so I would probably do something, some type of headline around that, with it being a treasure and a gem. And to me, that aligns with May. I don't know what the birthstone of May is, but we could figure out something with the editor to be really, we'll just call it that. But I would say something like that to really highlight this as the asset that it really is for Greensboro. And I would also take the liberty to also highlight the other 120 miles of trails and greenways that we have in Greensboro and how this connects. And you can get on this greenway system around downtown, and you can go as far north as Summerfield. You can go south, east, west as a connector and highlight that as well.
Great. So we're not going to put everybody on the spot for that question, but if does anybody else want to throw something else?
I would just go with small city, big vision.
I do neighborhood connect, something big about all the neighbors. I do Megbot cranks up the Greenway. I would do something about any of the artists. And I mean, that's just right off the top of my head. But I think of lots more.
I'd start with move over Highline.
And I wouldn't mind seeing like a 36 hours in Greensboro. The Times used to do that as a really regular feature, and that would be kind of fun to have a 36 hours in Greensboro. Dawn?
Downtown Greensboro, everybody connects with the Greenway. It's for everyone throughout our entire community.
Great, thank you. One more, Susan?
Well, it's not about that, but the connection thing I think is good. And I in preparation for this, was doing a little bit of research. And I went on the AI, of course, and because I was reading about Highline, because one of the things Dabney told us that we should be prepared to talk about something funny or memorable, and I have nothing funny. I've had fun, but nothing funny. But my memory was of being in New York in 2011 at a meeting where I was able to go on a tour of the High Line, and I kind of got a sick stomach because we were just struggling to get enough money to do the things we wanted to do and get things going. So I was reading today about High Line, and I'm just going to say these were some of the benefits and that I read that are ours: sustainable design, real estate growth, private investment, tourism revenue, public gathering space, accessibility, open to everybody, health and wellness, community identity, strengthens neighborhood pride, public art, innovative design, cultural programming, hosting, events, education, whatever. We've got all of that. But you know what? Theirs is a 1.4-mile line. Ours is a circle that connects all of these neighborhoods. So I just think we're a lot better than they are.
And if you've ever walked on the High Line, sometimes you feel like a little herd of cattle because there's so many people on there. It's not always the incredible experience that you're envisioning. So, okay, how about another question? Mark?
So I ride the Atkin northern part of the Greenway quite a bit. And when I connect from the Target all the way into the true Greenway around downtown, it's gravel. And I know there's been tons of talk about the finishing of that and the redesign of the roads and everything else. Is there a path forward? Is there a game plan?
There is. We had a public meeting about this very recently. We are in design right now for that remaining section, and we are leveraging some earmarks that we were able to secure from Congress, as well as other transportation funding to get this done. We have some challenges. NCDOT is planning to replace all of the structures on Wendover Avenue, which we have to pass under. And the timing for that is creating challenges, but we are working through some of the vague deadlines that NCDOT is giving us to figure out how we move things forward, phase this in a way where we can complete full sections and finally get the full connection done in a safe way. You know, we're replacing what was a rail line that had the benefit of gates that closed when those streets had to be closed when the train was coming. We won't have that same thing, so we're having to be creative and look for places where we might need to change intersections, or we might need to realign the Greenway itself so that we can make it as safe as possible. But yes, we are working on that.
And I love that you asked that, Mark, because I really think when that A and Y connection is made, and you'll be able to go from downtown Greensboro up through Midtown and the Battleground Parks District, up through Summerfield, you ultimately can connect to the Mountains to Sea Trail, incredibly important trail across the state of North Carolina. And if you hop on the Mountains to Sea Trail and go to Durham, you connect to the East Coast Greenway, a 3,000-mile greenway running from Maine to Florida, that they've built about probably 1,200 miles of that and have a nice 10-year plan to complete that. I think that's going to do a lot for bicycle tourism. You hear people all the time talking about going to Greenville, to the Swamp Rabbit Trail, and going to the Virginia Creeper Trail, and I think we are going to have that exact same opportunity here when we get that really important connection made. Any other questions?
Last question, just about the transportation piece and tourism. So someone mentioned about Amtrak coming and with their bike and riding the Greenway. Is there any talk about maybe the airport, people coming from the airport and having some kind of way to be able to get to the Greenway when they can bring their own transportation?
Sure. So a couple things. If you've ever flown with a bicycle, you know how incredibly challenging that is. But one of the things that we have done is partnered with a private entity to provide access to bikes and electric scooters. So even if you didn't bring a bike, we have a way for you to experience the downtown Greenway if you don't want to walk, where you can use electrified bicycles, electrified scooters to enjoy that facility. The other thing I'll say is we're working really hard with our transit agency to connect our community out to the airport. We don't have that kind of connection today, but it is one of the things that's recommended in our long-range transit plan that is a critical path item to make things like that kind of tourism where you don't want to necessarily have to rent a car, you don't necessarily want to have to Uber everywhere possible.
Great question. Good vision. Any other questions? Yes, Myrna.
So, Dawn, I was interested in what you were saying about rezoning. Can you say a little bit more about that for somebody who doesn't know about it? Okay,
Dawn, you can use the mic.
Thank
What's
you.
the instruction?
Right now, if you have a building inside the Greenway that's zoned light industrial, then that's all that can be used for, the category of light industrial. So, for an example, you wouldn't be able to necessarily have an ice cream shop. So what we're asking for, particularly the land that is directly attached to the Greenway, so that people that are on the Greenway can come right in, have something to eat all the way around wherever the land is available, but it has to be rezoned. It can't be. And particularly for housing, because we've got some very large strips of land where we could have put apartments, condos, and they would face the Greenway.
So is it feasible? I mean, is this something that really could happen?
Oh yeah, I think it will. I think it goes to the city and the city will see the value and think of the tax value of that land once it's rezoned for the city and the county. But no, I think this will happen and could happen shortly. And then you're going to get developers that will come in and buy the land or buy the building and refurbish it for whatever the needs are for the people on the Greenway.
Yes, Trip.
I can remember when the Greenway was started, the first big public money that we got was transportation. And one of the selling points that we made is that it's going to be an alternative way to get to work. Look at all the different uses that we're talking about in the Greenway now. And I haven't heard getting to work being one of the top ones. But one of the most, Susan, you were talking about highlights. I think one of the biggest highlights for me is when we were opening Phase 1A. And there was a TV station down there. And we were on, down behind Urban Ministry. And they were interviewing us, and we were saying, well, why do you think that this is going to be good? And I said, well, it's going to provide another way to get to work. And about that time, we saw somebody coming towards us. We didn't plan this, I promise you. We saw this guy coming to work, or coming towards us, and the TV people went up and said, well, it's glad to see you're using this. What are you using it for? I said, I am walking to work. And that's, I think we can continue to explode. But let's don't forget that it's a way of transportation to get to work. And a lot of this economic development that's going around it, that's what we're going to be doing.
Great, thank you, Joe. Any other questions? Hi, James.
I think James Griffin from the Warrenshire community, and we had the pleasure of being first lady in Greenway. But what was important to us is that our history was told. You know, where we were, who we were, and it was told, and that was a good thing. But I would like to see other people's history told around the Greenway about the different neighborhoods. So to me, it was a great historical connection to the city of Greensboro.
That's great, I love that. Thanks, James. So we're going to wrap up shortly, but I'm going to throw it out to this group, and everybody doesn't have to answer, but you can answer if you want to. And then maybe if we have time, we've heard a couple of really fun anecdotes from folks here, so we might even let other people share any kind of really significant memory or funny anecdote that you might like to share with the group as we wrap up.
I have a funny story. Well, funny to me anyway, funny to us. I've worked with Dabney for 20 years on this project, and when we started out, I had not done this kind of work before, but I'd done something similar. Like I thought, oh, well, my skills can translate pretty well to this job, so sure, I can help you commission public art for the Greenway, no problem. Well, of course, I didn't know what I was getting into, but I think we did okay looking back. But at the time, we would commission these things, and oh my God, every single one of them, there was something that went awry. I mean, we solved it, we fixed it, but it was like, it was challenging. It was really challenging. And I was wondering, is this me? Is it just because I don't have the experience? Or is it Dabney? I mean, and so we were at, was it elsewhere? And a woman came down from Boston who was with the Rose Kennedy Greenway. I mean, big time in the scheme of things person to come to Greensboro. And she had this notebook. And she was talking to us about commissioning art for Boston. And I said, what's that notebook? And she said, well, this is all my projects that I've done with the Rose Kennedy Greenway. And she opened it up and she said, and every single one of them had this big red bar going across, problem. Every single one of them had this huge problem that came up from the course of commissioning a particular project and how they solved it. And I thought, oh my God, thank God. This is just par for the course for commissioning public art, is that there's always a challenge. You always have to collaborate, you have to problem solve, and ultimately you wind up with a finished installation that you can be proud of. But boy, those problems, they do keep jumping. So anyway, that's my funny memory.
Anybody else have one you want to share?
Mine is a little embarrassing, but we're amongst friends. And I have some stories, I don't think they're appropriate for this space, but those who worked on it with some of the art pieces, including the benches, do remember that experience. But I will say for me, you know, on the health and wellness side, I'm almost ashamed to say this, but I had a couple of friends of mine that decided we were going to start a run club. And collectively, all three of us may have exercised probably in the last 4 years, maybe twice. And we were going to use the Greenway, you know, after work as a way to start our health journey. 4 miles is really long. We found that out. But I will say one of the incentives and one of the other reasons why we really like the Greenway and we always try to encourage folks to get out is because of all the interesting stops along the way. So one of the motivations for us is joymongers. And so that was actually like our checkpoint on the Greenway. One of the spurs, we would stop there on our workout and then we would just go back to our cars. But we are going to restart it. I was very proud. We did do the run for the Greenway. I walked, but finished it. Didn't do the full 5K, but it still is a great way for us to be able to get out and really enjoy, just the different sites. In all seriousness, it's a great amenity and an asset, to Greensboro, but we will be using that once the Greenway officially opens. We will try to start again. And we may not do the full 4, but that will be our stretch goal. So,
well, that seems like maybe a good place to wrap up as we're talking about joymongers and people maybe thinking about a little beverage and something to eat. So thank you so much for being here with us.